Well, welcome to another tutorial. In this tutorial we're going to go back to the miniatures department and we're going to be looking at lathe work, woodwork. Now sometimes you're going to need some lathe work that's going to look like wood, so you're not going to make it up out of other materials because you want it to look like wood. It might be for your doll house or some other thing like that, and you want the texture and the grain of the wood. Now you can do that with a lathe, and you've got to do it in timber so that it gets those colours. Here's a small one, and you want to get smaller still than that for some projects. 21 scale will be okay, and that would be like the top of a chair or something. And you want to get down even further, something smaller, and you might even want to make some door handles or knobs or something that are going to be made of wood and look like wood, so you've got to turn them. I went down as far as even getting a kebab stick, which is what you make your pinchos out of, and I even tried a matchstick, but it was not a very straight matchstick, so it didn't turn out quite so well, but that's potential there anyway. Now for all of those, you're obviously going to need a lathe. And of course I didn't have a lathe, and once again couldn't afford a lathe. You can get some really nice miniature ones, but I couldn't afford it. So I came up with this setup. And this one is a foot operated lathe. Now I had the good fortune of finding a chuck and getting it onto a shaft. I also scavenged some bearings, which was very nice, and I came across a metal pulley which got me started. But I want to make a new one where the lathe piece here is all made of wood and I can use this piece for other things. So let's have a go at it. Now you're basically going to need a baseboard to stick it on, anything will do, of a reasonable size, and we're also going to need a base stick for the whole assembly to go onto. It's not critical, but I'm going to make it about a centimetre by that wide, about 5 I suppose. Now it's not critical which things you're going to make next, but I think I'll make the pulley at the end. Now you're going to need like a bolt with some nuts, or you can make a shaft out of a piece of metal and put some threads on the end so that we're going to have a spinning shaft. Now let's first take some MDF, which is going to be about this thickness here. Not sure what thickness that is, but it's not critical. I'm going to make it roughly 5 centimeters, so I'm going to measure to make a circle, and also I'm going to find out what my bolt is. It's roughly 7.5 millimeters, that one, so I'm going to want a drill bit also that's 7.5 millimeters, the same. Okay, so I'm going to drill my hole, cut off a square of this, find the center and drill a hole and chop that off there. Just drill through that center. And then cut that off. I'm going to take all the nuts and bolts or the threads off, nuts should I say, and put it onto there, and then screw it up nice and tight. Tighten it up nice and tight. Now in order for us to get the circle, how to make a circle, that's so that we can now get a good circle, and then I can put that on the bench top or something to stop it spinning, so I can now spin it and hold a pen against there, give it a turn, so it's going to give me exactly and then I'm going to, a bit rough, but cut around that so I know where my center is.
And after taking off the bolt, we're going to cut it on the saw to cut out that little round wheel. And of course, put your bolt back on there and tighten it up, and that will spin quite nicely. Now we're wanting to put a V in there so that our string is not going to fall off it. So you could either just laboriously cut that with a saw, you're making a groove in there, or put it into something that's going to rotate it like a drill. And there we have it. And of course that's going to go on the end. Next thing is we're going to need another circle for there. So let's get a piece of board and roughly find a hole and make a mark. Chop a piece off, put the thing, and basically make another circle just like the other. Plonk it in there. Drill our hole. And cut it off. Of course, put the thing on there. Put it in there by the bench side. And then go around. Oh, it looks like we've got a little extra. Okay, and cut that out. Then we're going to screw a little nut on, then that, and then a final nut. So that is going to be what we're going to attach our chuck to. Now in here is where we're going to have our bearing. Now if you had done a bearing with a straight stick, you'd have no problems here, but notice we've got some thread. Now it's going to chew out anything that we're going to have as a bearing. So we need to file that off. You're going to just file between those bolts to file the thread off. It's a little bit laborious, but you take it down until the thread is gone and it's just arriving at the metal. So now you can see I've filed it down to more or less till those little lines of the thread are just disappearing, and then I'm going to get some sandpaper and spin it around in that so that I'm going to get it nice and shiny and smooth. And now for the bearing. Now if you had used a shaft like this and put threads on the end, you could possibly use some bearings, ball bearings or whatever to fix that. But in this case I'm going to take this and go for a second best, make it a bush. Now here I've got a piece of tube from a toilet seat or something, and it's going to very tightly go on there. So I'm going to measure the distance between those two, draw on it, and then cut it off. I'm also going to slice it down the edge there with this saw blade here, so that when it goes onto here tightly, I want to be able to, because we now got the thread missing here, it's going to have to clamp in. Just finish up cutting that. So I've got it to cut. This. Now if I measure that, it was, if I remember rightly, 7 millimeters with the 7.5 millimeters on the thread, but if I go now measure this side, it's exactly 6 millimeters. Now that tube was is actually 6.5, 7 millimeters, and if I make that cut there and shrink it down, close the gap, I'm now going to get 6.5 millimeters. Now I may have to put that in the vise and down the very same cut that you cut before, carefully cut another one just to take a little bit more meat out of the tube, so that when it goes back onto the shaft it's going to clamp down and be a little bit tighter onto that shaft. And there we have it. So that when we open it up again with the screwdriver, and put it back down on there, it's going to clamp in quite nicely, so that that's now tight there, and now it's much better. Make it clamp right round so it's, and now that spins and it doesn't wobble hardly any, and it's going to spin quite nicely. So by the time I get it all assembled again, give a flick and it will spin quite reasonably. Now the next thing we want to do is mount it here somehow. So we're going to get a piece of board that's going to go the width of that, and going to mark out more or less halfway, or that width there, and then we're going to find about halfway, and it's going to rotate somewhere around here, and I'm going to put a hole that is going by that width there. We're talking 8 millimeters to put an 8 millimeter hole through there with the drill. And then I'm going to find halfway of a hole, and then I'm going to cut through here with the saw and then down that way. So I'm going to have the hole plus a lid. And then that there is going to go on the end with the lid on top, and to secure that, flip it over and put a couple of screws through. Countersink them so they sit flat. Put your screws in. And that lid's going to go on top, and the right way. And you're going to do the same. And so we're going to take a couple of screws through there, place our assembly, bearing assembly there, place it on top, screw that down to clamp our bearing in place, and that should spin okay there. The next thing is to line up from that right straight down into the, should be in the center of the stick, and make a mark down the center of the stick. Then we're going to cut a groove down there. And with a brace and bit, I'm going to drill a hole right on the little line there. Also at the other end of that stick, the same thing. Flip it over so that I can get right through. nice and cleanly. On both ends. Now take a ruler and between the 2 points of the holes on the outside, you want to join those together with a line on both sides, and then we're going to cut those out with a saw. So I'm going to get a nice even slot down the middle. You can use a jigsaw or any saw or whatever, but cut it out anyhow. Now the next thing I want to do is probably raise it up so I can take advantage of that slot by putting a block under this end and that end of a piece of wood. Something along the lines of this and this. And then just attach those with a couple of screws. On both ends. Now for the chuck assembly, we're going to basically get a piece of wood that's going to go over that bolt, and we're going to have to find halfway once again and make a hole in it that nut is going to go through. And in this case, a brazen bit will do that. On both sides. Cut it off. And then I'm going to take the assembly, put it on top of there, center it, and then drill a couple of little holes through so that I can attach that piece to the other piece. And with some little screws, screw them on there. I could also glue it just to make it more solid. And I could also just roughly trim those corners off too so that they're not quite so spiky. I can center them up when we get to turning on the lathe later on to make it prettier. Now we're almost done with this end of things. We want now another piece to go in here to take the hole, to take the piece of wood we're going to turn. So once again, we're going to chop a piece off. And then we're going to then, with some screws, put it on there as center as you can sort of get it. And then with a couple of screws, screw that through onto the other base plate. Now to find the center of that, get your pen and you're going to spin that round and find that it's going to give you a nice little circle. Now put a mark across the two of those so you don't lose the orientation of your screws. Now this is the part that is all very flexible depending on what you want to turn. Now if this is a stick that I'm wanting to turn of this diameter, I'm going to make a square hole in that. Now to do that, and then you can make it different sizes depending on the size that you're going to be dealing with. You need to find roughly the center of that, make a line, and then with your compass go from there out to 2 points exactly equidistance, then out to from those points a little further out, so from the other 2 points, and that's going to give you your perpendiculars so that you're going to get it perfectly square out there, so that when you join those together you're going to get exactly equilateral thingies. Now, I can then find the distance of this piece of wood that I'm going to turn, and I'll probably just use this one as stock timber. And once again, you're going to find that you've got to work it so that it's going to make a square of exactly those distances, to there and to there again, and they should all line up. And if I was to put it in the center, it should make a circle to reconfirm all of that. Okay, so I'm gonna cut out, drill a hole through that, and then cut out that square there. And that should fit into that hole nice and centered. Okay, drill like that. Then with your jigsaw, cut out that hole as precisely as you can. And so that is going to fit right into there nicely, and it's going to turn without slipping. Now line up your lines on there again and screw that back on, and you're basically, apart from making that circular, you're basically there. Now if you want to center that up, you can turn that into a circle and cut it out on your jigsaw. Now you can make the different sizes of those and interchange them depending on what you're going to be turning. Now that's basically it. Apart from rounding that off, that's going to take this end. Now we need something to be able to sustain or hold the other end. We're going to make basically another one of these, but without the pulley on the end, to go on this end, and it has to be able to move up and down this track here. Now I'm going to take a block that's like this, and then make a mark that's the width of the track, and also the depth a little bit less than the track. And I'm going to cut it off round about the same height as the other through there. And so that's going to slot in there, and it's going to slide up and down like that. And we're going to find the height of where that center is, and just going by those lines that we made, I can see that it's 4 centimeters. And on that block, I'm going to find the center and then up that same 4 centimeters to there. And we're going to repeat the same thing as we did on the other end by making a circle, then putting a bolt through. In this case it was a screw with a round top here, bolt it in tight, spin it, cut it out, and so now we've got a secure piece. Then attach this with the square and everything to take the other end of that thing there. And also for the bearing, I've done exactly the same thing where I've filed off the thread so that I'm now going to get a nice shaft. And then I got another, what do you call that, a nut that was smaller than this thread, and drilled it out at the same, then countersunk it into the wood once I bored the hole through, and also a washer or another one of those on the other side, it doesn't really matter, so that now I've got a nice little bearing that's going to let that spin also. I'm going to be taking another little block and gluing and nailing that onto there with a bolt through it with another washer or something underneath, so that I can clamp it, move that up and down, and then tighten it off so that it's fixed. So there's the finished piece. I've done the pipe there, screw on there attached under with that, and made another one of these, and it will go into here. In the process of putting your stick in, you're going to put it into one end here, into the other square bit there, and slide it in, tighten the screw, and there we have, it will spin very nicely like that. I want them a bit shorter probably for a smaller project. And I'm going to screw that whole thing assembly to a baseboard from underneath, so that we can then start to think about powering it. There's another little extra. I'm going to just make a thing here just to add a little bit extra strength to this up and down assembly. Now to power it, I'm going to be using a bigger pulley onto the smaller pulley so that the little ones goes faster with the other, and we're also got to make the bearing setup here adjustable so that we can tighten the string. So we're going to basically get a piece of board that's reasonably thick and hefty because we want a bit of inertia in the whole thing. And once again, you're going to do the same process as before of finding your center roughly and bore a hole. Do the same as you did with the little ones, cut out a circle through, and you're going to make basically the same thing as this, but much bigger. Now, having done the shaft and my bushes and things, I'm going to get a piece of wood, like a 2x2, 5x5 centimeters, and cut it off about the length of that. And on both ends, I'm going to find the center from corner to corner. Both ends. And then I'm with a drill bit, same size as my bushes or my bushes, drill a hole from both ends so it goes right through. Yes, and of course that should just gently tap into there, and then that shaft will go down through there. And so we're going to get it spinning nicely like that. The next thing to do is to do the adjustment thing, which is get a door hinge of some description, and you're going to put it onto that block, screw it on, then you're going to get a drill bit the same size as a bolt that's going to go through there as a tensioner. So just drill that through. And then on the other side, you're going to screw it through. Now if it's nice and tight, which is just what I wanted, you can get a tap and die and tap a thread in there first, which is doing, and then screw that right through. Now we want to line up the wheel so that it's in line with the pulley there, and we're going to be attaching that hinge here so that the what do you call it, the wheel can be tensioned. And the way that tensioning works is once we get our string on here like this, you can wind that knob there and it will raise it up and pull the string tighter, so as a tensioner. Now to make that turn, I want a little handle thing, so I'm going to take a screw and a piece of metal. I'm going to tie a piece of string to that and a spacer of some description, and I'm going to screw it in just a little bit out from the from the main shaft, and you'll be able to figure that one out yourself. And so that thing there is going to make it go around. Now we're going to need a little bit of a groove, so our string's not going to come out of it. So I'm just going to run my saw on there for a little while until I get a bit of a groove. It doesn't have to be very deep on this one. And then you're going to get some string like this, and you're going to go around a couple of times so that it's going to, and then make a, once you've got that around a couple of times, tie it off in a knot like that. And when it goes around twice and onto the pulleys, it should go over nicely. Oops. It's sort of like a spinning machine, really. And then tension that screw so that it's going to be a little bit tighter. Then attach a piece of string to this thing here, and that's going to be then attached to a piece of wood down here. Tie a knot in that, so it's going to go up and down, and then give it a bit of a flick. Then with the foot operator thing, it'll now spin quite nicely. Just like the normal turning, you're going to use or fabricate your tools and things. I'm just going to use a blade like this just to square it up, and then use your little tool and bits and pieces to do your wood turning from there. So there you have it. Now there are a few little improvements that I would make if I was making another one, and they'd be these. I would put a wing nut on there. I would make this stand here with a wing nut on, just as a support. And I would put some sandpaper on the inside of the wheel so that you can use it to sand with. And down here on this foot piece, I would put a board and a hinge so that it won't slip all over the place. But most of all, I would replace this bearing with some ball bearing races with a bolt through, make it twice the width, probably about something like this, because it's okay with a bush there and there because they don't take quite so much strain, but this goes very fast and it'll wear out very, very fast. Even though this works, I would prefer to have some very good robust ball bearings. And so there you have it.